In 2011, the music world lost one of the most talented artists of her generation. Amy Winehouse was just 27 years old when she was found dead in her London home. The official cause of death? Alcohol poisoning. But Amy's story is about so much more than just another tragic end in the world of fame. It's a story of loneliness, toxic relationships, and an industry that was happy to take everything from Amy, but in the end, did nothing to save her. To truly understand Amy's journey, we need to go back to the very beginning, to London, where it all started. Amy Winehouse was born on September 14, 1983 in London. She grew up in a typical British middle-class household. When Amy was 9, her parents divorced, the result of her father's years-long affair. After the split, Amy stayed with her mom while her father largely lost interest in her. So, from a young age, Amy had to deal with feelings of rejection, something that would become really important as we follow her story. Music was always present in the Winehouse household. Amy was first introduced to jazz as a child, mainly thanks to her dad, who was a huge Frank Sinatra fan. By age 9, Amy was attending a theater school where she honed her acting and singing skills. At 16, Amy began writing her own music. Around that time, she also worked as a journalist, but that didn't stop her from creating songs. In her free time, Amy would cover songs by famous artists, putting her own spin on them. One of her friends recorded her and sent the tape to a talent scout. Before long, Amy signed a contract with a talent management company. At first, the company kept Amy under wraps, and no wonder. More and more record labels were starting to show interest. Eventually, Amy signed with Island Records, the label she stayed with for the rest of her life. At just 20 years old, Amy released her debut studio album, Frank. The album was generally well received by critics and even earned her a few awards. After Frank came out, Amy performed occasional shows at jazz clubs and small venues around the UK. She wasn't a big star yet, and her performances had an intimate, low-key vibe. Real fame came in 2006 with the release of her second and sadly final album, Back to Black. Songs like Rehab, You Know I'm No Good, and the title track Back to Black became instant hits. The album was a massive success, both commercially and artistically. Amy promoted the record through charity concerts, TV appearances, and various festivals, but the rest of the promotion didn't go nearly as smoothly. In November 2007, Amy set off on a 17-day tour, but her first show in Birmingham was a disaster. Amy was drinking on stage, stumbling, forgetting her lyrics. The crowd booed, people walked out, and unfortunately, the next shows went much the same way. After her London concert, just days later, fans were saying Amy looked completely drunk on stage. By the end of November, Amy announced she was canceling all her concerts and public appearances for the rest of the year. The official reason? Doctor's orders for complete rest. But it wasn't hard to see that Amy was battling addiction. Even so, that didn't stop her from sweeping the 2008 Grammy Awards, where she took home 5 trophies, a win that further boosted Back to Black's already massive sales. In 2009, Amy made a return to the stage. But sadly, she brought her addictions with her. She often forgot lyrics, relying on help from her band or the audience to get through songs. The last 2 years of her life were like a steep downhill slide. In June 2011, Amy performed her final concert in Belgrade, and it was heartbreaking to watch. She slurred into the microphone, eventually threw it aside, could barely stand, and finally walked off stage before the show was even over, sparking a scandal. After that, she canceled the rest of her tour. Just a month later, she was found dead in her London home. A lot of people don't understand the phenomenon of Amy Winehouse. To them, she's just the addict who forgot her lyrics on stage. Some even struggle to see her as iconic because she only released 2 albums, and many of her shows were marred by substance abuse. But Amy was beloved by critics and had a massive fan base that adored her unique style and raw authenticity. Her success on stage didn't translate to happiness in her personal life. Her private struggles kept growing, and the pressure of fame only made things worse. In the end, those very struggles pushed Amy to the edge, and ultimately, they made her fall. A lot of people believe that Blake Fielder Civil was the reason Amy Winehouse died. Blake and Amy first met back in 2005 at a pub called The Good Mixer. Sparks flew between them right away, even though both of them were in relationships at the time. Before long, they started seeing each other, and Amy became more and more wrapped up in this self-destructive guy. Eventually, Blake and Amy became almost inseparable. As a sign of her love, Amy even got Blake's name tattooed on her body. But that love didn't last. Not long after, their relationship fell apart. Just a few months in, Blake left Amy and went back to his ex-girlfriend. That's when Amy developed something like an obsession with Blake. She was incredibly sensitive, and her total inability to handle her emotions pushed her to the edge. After the breakup, she was so devastated that she stopped eating, let her apartment fall into chaos, and drowned her sorrows in bottle after bottle of alcohol. At that point, Amy had just released her first album, and her fan base was steadily growing. She poured all that heartbreak onto paper, and out of that pain came the album Back to Black. The breakup with Blake became Amy's creative fuel, inspiring songs about betrayal, loneliness, and abandonment. But even with this creative breakthrough, Amy's health was going downhill fast. And to make things worse, shortly after the album's release, she did something a lot of people couldn't believe. She got back together with Blake. Just 2 weeks later, they were married. Unfortunately, the honeymoon quickly turned into a nightmare as the couple plunged into hard drug use. The paparazzi didn't miss a beat, relentlessly following the newlyweds. Soon, photos of the pair under the influence were all over the media. Blake himself later admitted that he was the one who introduced Amy to hard drugs. After one of their overdoses, Amy and Blake decided to check into rehab together. But, as you might guess, it didn't help. As soon as they got out, they fell right back into their old habits. The couple was sinking deeper into addiction, and their relationship grew increasingly toxic. Amy wanted to do everything Blake did, even his most destructive, reckless behaviors. You could say they were tied together by a dysfunctional bond that, tragically, was slowly destroying Amy from the inside. In 2008, when Blake landed in prison, Amy once again spiraled into despair. She started skipping shows and replacing meals with more and more alcohol. Over time, she began cheating on Blake, and by 2009, the couple had divorced. If you listen to Amy's music, you can tell she struggled with marriage, with fame, with the crushing expectations of her fans and the media. The entire situation was a massive weight on her shoulders. She was trapped in a golden cage she couldn't break out of, and as she started exposing more and more of her pain to the public, the media was merciless, exploiting every weakness they saw. Mitch Winehouse, Amy's father, has long been a figure of controversy. In several documentaries about Amy, there's speculation that Mitch may have exploited his daughter. He's definitely someone you can't ignore in this story. Mitch is like the elephant in the room, an obvious part of the problem, but one few people want to talk about. After all, he's the father of a tragically lost music icon, and it feels uncomfortable to throw accusations at him. A lot of people dislike Mitch because of what Amy herself said about him in her music. Mitch cheated on Amy's mom and left the family, and that shaped Amy deeply, and not in a good way. In her song, What Is It About Men?, Amy sings about breaking up her lover's family, saying she's fulfilling her Freudian fate. In other words, the cycle repeats. Amy reenacted the patterns she saw growing up. When her dad left for another woman, Amy likely felt she wasn't good enough to make him stay. That sense of rejection shaped her whole life. Jealousy, loneliness, emptiness. These became the emotions that filled her. Mitch, for his part, didn't think his leaving had any real impact on Amy. But the truth was far from that. Even if on the outside she acted like she didn't care, inside it was a different story. As a teenager, Amy was already on antidepressants. She struggled with eating issues, and her guitar and songwriting became her escape, a way to process everything she was going through because of her dad. For a child, when a parent walks out, the message is pretty clear. If someone you love can leave you once, anyone can leave you. No love feels safe. No love feels trustworthy. According to the documentary, Amy was emotionally neglected during the time she needed her parents the most. It's possible they just weren't mature enough themselves to give her the support she needed. So Amy had to grow up too fast on her own. She was raised without the father she desperately wanted by her side. That rejection left scars, and it echoed in her adult life, especially in her toxic relationships. Years later, when her father suddenly showed interest after she became famous, Amy was over the moon, like she was finally getting the approval she'd been craving all along. But the problem was, Mitch didn't really know how to be a father to his adult daughter. Not only did he fail to support her, but he often downplayed just how bad her mental health had gotten. One of the biggest reasons people criticize Mitch is because, to many, it seems like he used his daughter's fame for his own gain. And there are plenty of examples. While Amy was still alive, Mitch got the chance to release his own album, something that happened mainly because he was Amy's dad. After her death, he proposed a hologram tour featuring her image. He sold off her belongings in auctions for huge sums, including her prized guitar. These days, Mitch controls her estate. He's written a book, been involved in making documentaries about Amy, and runs the Amy Winehouse Foundation, which, let's be honest, also brings in money. After Amy's death, Mitch took control over most of her assets, which sparked controversy because it gave him more power over her finances and image. Amy's mother, Janice, stayed mostly in the background. Even though she had some rights as Amy's mom, she didn't have enough strength or influence to take control, leaving Mitch with the upper hand. Now, Mitch isn't the only person profiting off Amy's image, and in theory, there's nothing wrong with keeping her memory alive. But it's hard to shake the feeling that Mitch just loves being in the spotlight, and enjoys the profits that come with it. It's a bad look, especially because Mitch has never really taken responsibility for his role in Amy's downfall. Sure, no parent wants to believe they failed their child, but the fact remains that his intentions often came off as shallow and insincere. The hard truth is, at some point, Mitch started seeing Amy as a source of income. He kept pushing her forward, even when she was in a dark and fragile place, as if the fame and money mattered more than the human being. If you watch interviews with Mitch, it's clear he loved Amy, and no doubt he regrets not doing more to save her, but that doesn't change the fact that Amy's fame blinded him at times. Too often he didn't put his daughter first, even though she desperately needed the support of someone so central in her life. Blake wasn't the only one to blame here. Sure, he sped up Amy's spiral, but the truth is, Amy had been carrying personal struggles long before she met Blake. Their relationship just made the pain worse. Of course, the media did what the media always does. Instead of seeing Amy as a person struggling with countless problems, they chose to judge her, shame her, and drag her through the mud. It was just easier, and frankly more profitable, to snap another picture of Amy looking like a strung-out homeless person, rather than do anything that might actually help pull her out of the darkness. The media painted Amy as emotionally unstable, toxic, and mentally unwell. Paparazzi followed her every step, often pushing situations into dangerous territory. Photographers were camped out non-stop in front of her house, which, ironically, eventually led to thieves breaking in and stealing many of her valuable belongings. You see, one day, the thieves noticed there were no photographers outside her house, which was a clear sign to them that nobody was home. That's when they made their move. But honestly, that was the least of Amy's worries. The real damage was the public image the media created for her. Hate fueled more hate. First, the tabloids tore her apart, and then all that garbage was repeated by the people who religiously followed those trashy magazines. Paradoxically, all of this meant even more money for Amy. The media endlessly criticized her trashy lifestyle and her battle with drugs, and the public began to see her as a victim, someone completely out of control of her own life. And that turned into a self-sustaining marketing machine. Pain, downfall, and sadness became the fuel that generated even more profit. So, was there anything especially dramatic that happened on Amy's last night? Honestly, no, not really. The day before she died, Amy had a routine checkup with her doctor. Surprisingly, her test results looked good. She had been trying to stay sober for a while, but according to her bodyguard, Amy had started drinking again just 3 days before her death. On the night of July 22, 2011, Amy was at home, watching TV and drinking. Around 3 p.m. on July 23rd, her bodyguard found her unconscious in bed. When emergency services arrived, they quickly confirmed she was dead. After a year and a half of investigation and 3 autopsies, the coroner's final report was released. The autopsy confirmed that Amy died from accidental alcohol poisoning. Her blood alcohol level was an astonishing 0.416. Not only was that an incredibly high dose, but we also know Amy had been battling eating disorders. The physical weakness caused by those disorders contributed to her body simply being unable to handle the amount of alcohol she consumed. The story of Amy Winehouse should have been the story of one of the most talented artists of her generation, but as we've seen, in reality, it's mostly a story of a downfall, one the world just stood by and watched. Amy's father seemed more focused on her career than her health. The record label profited off her pain, and the entertainment industry exploited her image. The paparazzi, documenting her every move, treated her struggles like a spectacle. Perfect content to sell to the masses who were all too eager to pay for the next photo of a wasted celebrity. Her story almost feels like a textbook pattern. A troubled childhood, a toxic relationship, addiction, and all of it was leading her in one direction. The only question is, did it really have to end this way? Amy became part of the tragic 27 Club, joining the ranks of Kurt Cobain, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Jim Morrison. It's no coincidence that so many brilliant artists meet the same fate. For people like them, talent and sensitivity were both a gift and a curse. Fame came too fast, the addictions ran too deep, and there was no one around strong enough to stop the spiral. When you look at Amy's lyrics, it's hard not to feel like she was warning us about her own death. In Rehab, she sang openly about not wanting to go to treatment. In Back to Black, she was saying goodbye to the life she had known, swallowed by darkness. Her music was like a diary, one where Amy told the world about her pain, her loneliness, and the battle she ultimately lost right in front of us all.